This video is sponsored by War Thunder. On the surface, Geometry Dash is a simple little platformer game, but digging deep into the depths of its competitive scene, you'll see a darker side of it that is often brushed off. This is the story of a player who rose to the top of the mountain, but found the climb just wasn't worth it, who poured his life into the game, but ultimately ended up hating it. This is nSwish, and he just beat the level Bloodbath, one of the hardest in the game. Anyone in this position would congratulate themselves, but he was unsatisfied.
Thanks for virtually no support, you guys. I really appreciate it. Hopefully people will notice that I'm a good player. It only took me 9k attempts.
Even with this level and a couple of other extreme demons slain, he had less than 500 subscribers on YouTube, while players around him were getting the fame and validation he sought for.
Yes, I did it! Yes! Yes! Oh my god.
Becoming popular in this space is simple but challenging. If you beat hard levels, you get permission to show off to everybody. And when I say hard levels, I mean hard levels. Top Geometry Dash maps are ranked on the Demon list, a chart ran by a group of pros. Bloodbath and the other levels nSwish beats were all around top 20 difficulty. And as we've seen, those hardly get any clicks, even though they're still very tough. However, it does make sense when you think about it. People come from all over to visit the tallest building in the world, but something like the 20th ranked one doesn't get nearly as much love. Like, have you ever heard of the Shangsa IFS Tower? Yeah, me neither. nSwish needed to go big to prove himself among the hordes of wannabe players. And so what better way to do that than by taking on the hardest level ever created? This is Sonic Wave, one of GD's most notorious maps. Originally built and beaten by a hacker, this level was no joke. Just look at this gameplay. It pushed Geometry Dash's wave mode to its absolute limit, something nSwish didn't get much experience with in its other levels. The jump from Bloodbath to Sonic Wave was nothing to scoff at. Understand that even though the two were less than 20 spots away from each other on the list, levels get exponentially harder the farther up you go. To really drive my point home, there were insane demons at the bottom of the list at this time. Even your mother can be an insane demon. Extremes, especially the ones at the top, were an entirely different beast, but nSwish kept at it. He wouldn't make himself known if he didn't. So despite the time he had to pour in, despite the attempts it sucked up, despite the fails, he kept fighting. But on New Year's Day, after a months-long grind, nSwish would finally get his lucky break.
Oh my god! I did it!
If he could clear this after just months of playing, what else could he accomplish? But accomplish at what cost? Earlier, I showed you clips of some players' high points, but I never showed you any low points. I never showed you any backstory.
No! 97! 97! No! No!
If you want to grind, just know the consequences that's gonna come with it. Like, if you want to go for that #1 spot, you're not gonna have a lot of social life, where you're gonna have to like commit everything, like as GD as your only game for a while, and it's gonna suck. So it's up to you.
But nSwish went forward anyway, and considering he was a newer player, it's possible he just didn't know what he was getting into. Sonic Wave didn't stay on the top for long. Other players would later build and beat levels that were harder than it. No problem for nSwish. As 2018 came to a close, nSwish had the top 3 most challenging levels under his belt, along with a whole bunch of other list demons. An impressive feat in such a short amount of time, something that plays into my theory of a sort of GD gene. It's no surprise that genetics offer competitive advantages. In sports, discipline, training, and skill are often pushed aside for raw size. Like, did you know that a sixth of Americans above 7 feet tall play play in the NBA, Geometry Dash sees a similar effect.
I think there are like genetics that could help. Like, let's say if you have a better connection with your brain and your muscles, then that would also improve like reaction time even.
With nSwish's victories, I can't help but think that he was blessed with the GD gene. Look at the level Bloodlust, for example. If you've watched previous videos on this channel, you'd know what a nightmare it was for its verifier, NobbleBoy. He poured in 1,000 hours of playtime to beat this monstrous beast of a map, but here was nSwish who took it out in only 35. However, with all this being said, we can't downplay his effort. After all, natural talent is worthless if you don't put in the time to improve it and use it. Just talk to the 7-foot guys who aren't in the NBA. He was pushing his skills farther and farther and beating levels that were harder and harder.
No f***ing way. There's no way I did that. I just fluked that from 42.
I beat it. That feels amazing.
Yes!
Epic.
Soon, he didn't just have the top 3 down, it was the top 10, and later, the top 25. The Demon List gave players a score based on how many extremes they've beaten on it, and with nSwish's wins piling up, he was steadily rising up the leaderboards.
Yes! No, I got a 56!
He's mad.
I beat, no! 90, no, I'm just kidding, I beat it.
His attempt counts were stupidly low too, like with the level Kinos. The player Nepesta verified it after an ungodly 135,000 attempts. Do you want to guess how many nSwish poured in? However, despite all this being said, most of the community still slept on him. He wasn't given the respect and adoration he deserved. Look at the GD Awards, for example. They're an event held annually and endorsed by the game's developer, where fans come together to vote on the best levels, the best creators, and of course, the best players. Others had been in the game longer than him and had more achievements to back them up, but nSwish could surely get a nomination, right? Well, he was nowhere in sight. Reminder, this is the same guy who cleared all 25 of the most demanding levels in the game. Even if some people believed he was the best, they weren't even given the chance to vote for him. And I have a theory why. nSwish was openly hacking the game, but not in the way you'd expect. Experienced Geometry Dash players may know what I'm talking about, but because we love suspense on this channel, I'll wait until after I tell you about War Thunder to clue you in. It's the biggest vehicle combat game ever made, free on PC and console. Take control of 2,500 different tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships, ranging from classic 1920s vehicles to the mighty beast of today. With realistic graphics and authentic sound effects, you can feel like you're right on the battlefield. Join the worldwide 70 million strong community today in epic PvP battles. I love the game for its user friendliness. I got the hang of it pretty quickly. Using my link will get you a massive bonus pack to start off your journey. It includes the Eagle of Valor exclusive vehicle decorator, 100,000 Silver Lions, a 7-day premium account, and much more. It's available for a limited time and can only be picked up by new and returning players who haven't logged in during the past 6 months. So head right down to the comments or description and get the game. Again, War Thunder is free on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, and I hope to see you there. Now back to nSwish and him hacking the game. Like in all video games, having a high FPS monitor in GD gives you a competitive edge because of its better precision. But nSwish didn't have fancy tech like this, probably because he couldn't afford it. So instead, he used the hack called the FPS bypass to sort of trick the game into thinking he had one. Nowadays, this sort of tool is accepted. Heck, the developer added a version of it in the most recent update. It allowed those less fortunate to play at the same level as the professionals. But back in 2019, using this tool was a giant no-no because at the end of the day, it was hacking. A few months before the GD Awards, nSwish finally bit the bullet and got a pricey 240Hz monitor. But while he went on and did big stuff completely clean, most of his achievements were still done on using the bypass, and bypass meant illegitimate. For someone who poured in so much time and effort into this game, still being overlooked like this must have really stung. You've gotta understand that competitive Geometry Dash, just like in any other video game, isn't fun. You have to treat it like a job.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Like if you want to be the best of the best, you have to like put down eight or more hours every day.
On paper, playing hours and hours of video games sounds pretty fun, but GD is unique because when you're doing top extreme demons, you're technically losing 99.999% of the time, and if you have the wrong mindset, it could destroy you. If I had a nickel for every time a player quit a top level, I could buy Geometry Dash. Like literally buy the company RobTop Games. All these hours aren't spent on other video games you love, or lighter GD levels that are actually entertaining, or with your family and friends. And the question of whether all this is worth it hardly crosses players' minds. Yeah, in the immediate moment, you can earn some fame and glory from beating tough levels, but after time passes and your 15 minutes of fame is up, will it still matter? Will people remember you? And like in nSwish's case, will they even care in the first place?
Oh yeah, it is.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, of course I do regret a little bit because there was a lot more I could have done like outside of this game in real life, because I wasted so many hours into GD. Like it was absurd. I played like 14 hours a day sometimes, which is
14!
Yeah, it's not healthy.
nSwish had already spent so much time fighting through the most demanding challenges in the game, and he was still being overlooked. But going into 2020, he would force everybody's eyes on him and firmly place his seat at the head of the table. And he'd do it by beating the #1 demon. But nSwish has done that multiple times, you may be thinking. So why wasn't he taken as seriously? Well, because he wasn't the first guy to clear the levels he beats. At the end of a marathon, everybody crowds around the winner. Maybe #2, maybe #3 as well. But if you're in, let's say, 18th place, you don't get nearly as much love, even though you ran the same race and maybe finished just a couple seconds behind the first guys. nSwish was the 18th person to beat Sonic Wave back in the day. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Thankfully for our story, he was given the opportunity to be a brand new top 1 demon, and being ready to prove himself, he took it. This is the Golden, a level not just known for its difficulty but also its unique design. When nSwish first laid his eyes on it, he was blown away by its quality. In a world where most creators focus on making top levels as brutally hard as possible instead of somewhat pleasing to the eye, this was a breath of fresh air, and so he charged right into the biggest grind of his career. Outside of his work on the Golden, he'd continue playing other top levels, inching him closer and closer to the top of the Demon List leaderboard.
I verified the Golden, let's go. Finally.
He couldn't possibly be ignored now. With people's eyes truly on him, he'd continue to impress.
Oh, I beat it, let's go. Alright, I beat it so the stream ends, but... Nice. Finally. Let's go.
Soon, he hadn't just beaten the top 25, it was the top 35, then the top 50, and a few months after that, it was the top 75 hardest levels in the game. He had everything any Geometry Dash player would ever dream of, even better in the 2020 GD Awards. a landslide victory. Players were waiting to see what was next for this prodigy. Would he go on and beat the top 100? The top 150? But his answer to them was inactivity. The Golden would drop from number 1 to number 2, signifying a change in nSwish's attitude towards the game. I believe at this point, he was coming to realize that everything he worked for wasn't permanent. Because of how the demon list worked, it was essentially a leaky bucket. Every few days, new levels would be placed on the list and the bucket would leak as his accomplishments fell out of it, dropping his demon list score with it. And unless nSwish beats them, refills the bucket, and keeps his score up, he'll eventually fall off and lose his top spot. But this raises the question of whether this perpetual grind was even worth it, and nSwish's answer in the moment was, well, no. Keeping his score up would be like running 100 miles per hour on a treadmill for eternity. He had already gotten this far, why continue? With him clearing the entire freaking top 75, he had already established a compelling lead. But as the bucket leaked faster and with more force, his demon list score was plummeting as other players were racing up to meet him. With this dire situation, nSwish's demeanor changed. Though he was inactive in game, he was very active on Twitter, where he'd put up self-deprecating satirical posts. 6,754 days without a girlfriend. I eat dinner and end up with 32 text messages. It's all the bitches in my DMs, lol. Yeah, I'm not gonna read this one. Unfortunately, goofy tweets couldn't stop his downfall. By September 2021, other players were breathing down his neck on the leaderboard. The Canadian beast RG was just a couple levels away from overtaking him, while the Qatari Russian player Spirit X was not far behind. And in the distance, there was another competitor hailing from Britain. You may have heard of him. His name was Space UK, the notorious hacker. But at the time, he was yet to be caught and was soaring up the leaderboards faster than nSwish ever did. If RG and Spirit X couldn't take him, the incoming space train sure as hell would with enough time. nSwish, desperate not to lose everything he worked for, made a last-ditch effort to keep his prestigious top spot. In a video titled "My GD Career Has Just Begun," he cleared a top 20. This signaled a return to the old demon-slaying nSwish, especially as the description read this:
"No one is ever taking my number 1 spot."
But resistance to their advances was futile. It was like pouring a glass of water into a house fire. Fixing this problem would take a lot more than a single level. And a couple weeks later, RG would end up being the one to overtake nSwish, ending his reign on the top. Spirit X would get a brief moment in the sun before Space UK came in and began setting an unbeatable lead. The next couple of months would be marked by periods of inactivity and some mental health problems hinted at in a couple of Twitter posts. Whether these were caused by his defeats is unknown. After pouring his life, the entirety of his teenage years into this stupid cube game, this was all he had to show for it. He wasn't even in the top 10 players anymore. Soon, it was out of the top 50. The leaky bucket was pouring all the way out. The demon list looked nothing like it did back when he was at his peak. Most of his completions weren't even on it anymore, and they didn't count for points at all. There were more than 35 levels harder than the Golden, including one called Walter freaking White. And so, nSwish finally decided to leave it all behind. In September of 2023, his social media profiles began to disappear one by one. His Geometry Dash account was later abandoned. He hasn't touched the game since. If you haven't tried War Thunder yet, what are you waiting for? New and returning players who haven't logged in during the past 6 months can use my link in the pinned comments or description to get a massive bonus pack with tons of goodies. War Thunder has been a long-time supporter of this channel and they help me pay my team well, so it would mean the world to me if you could hop in and give it a try. Again, the game is free on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, and I'll see you on the battlefield.
If you enjoyed this video, you'll love this one that I picked out just for you. But anyway, I'll catch you later.